G'day, and welcome to the Seacreatures Podcast, a show all about the amazing animals that live beneath the waves. On each episode, we chat about a specific sea creature with a guest who has spent time and interacted with this ocean animal. Our guests range from marine biologists to divers, underwater photographers, citizen scientists, and anyone with an intense passion for marine life. My name is Matt Testoni, and I'm all of the above. And joining me for this episode of the Seacreatures Podcast is Vanessa Pirotta, and she is a whale scientist, and we're going to be talking all about the awesome world of whales. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Matt, and your listeners. I am so excited to be here because you're talking about whales. Of course, I love whales, although we should probably use the C word, Matt, cetacean, which means whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And that's just the first juiciness that your listeners will have on this podcast.
Yeah, because originally we were going to talk about humpback whales, and I thought let's go back to just core whales because I feel like there's some cool info there. But before we jump into whales and the specifics, tell me a little bit about how you got into whales and how you became a whale scientist.
Good question, Matt. I'm the prime example of you don't need to be living near the ocean to work on whales. Matt, I grew up on a farm outside of Canberra, 40 acres where no marine mammals were located. I had a pet cow, Zach. He was there, but there was no ocean. But for some reason, I was fascinated by whales and books and dolphins. I had a dolphin Barbie, killer whale Barbie, the movie Free Willy, where I saw southern resident killer whales swimming free on the video. All of these amazing things just really came together where I was like, I'm so madly in love with these creatures. I don't understand why, but I want to learn more. I think it's the way they look, the snippets we see of their lives, all of these amazing things. And I worked at a zoo, became a dolphin trainer, and went, this is all not for me. I think what I got to do is go into science. So then I became a whale scientist.
Ooh. And so you said you worked at a zoo.
Yep.
What did you do there?
I sure do. I worked at a zoo. So I started out through education. And actually, a lot of the stuff I do is educating people. And then I had some zookeeping experience. And I think it was probably my foundations working in a zoo in a marine facility where I learned the importance of sharing information and making sure that as a scientist now, understanding that this information needs to be cross-generational. So making sure big kids and young kids are informed in ways that is not preachy, but just real down-to-earth ways like this podcast, where people can be listening to this information driving home or riding a bike or whatever you do, right? And the idea is that I just saw how powerful it was for people to be aware of the things that they are interested in, or for those people who weren't that interested, how to try and get them to be aware of why they should be.
Definitely. And I think, it shows, like, as you said, growing up on a farm, you don't have to be anywhere near the ocean to appreciate it and want to learn more. And I think that's such an important thing for people to remember.
Massive, because ultimately we are in the one Earth. We're on planet A, there's no planet B. And without getting too in depth to it, pardon the pun, but our actions on land really do have impacts in the ocean. And then the ocean is essentially our second lungs. We always think about the forest, and the forest is great. We love trees. But the ocean is instrumental in making sure that every second breath is provided to us. So we are connected in ways, regardless of being physically there or not. But we are connected through the ocean, on Earth, through the air we breathe.
True. So, whales. Let's kick off talking about what is a whale, because I was thinking about this question before and I was like, yes, I remember early in my marine science days, I didn't realize a dolphin was actually a type of whale. But then I was thinking, is a porpoise? And I didn't know. So tell us what a whale is.
Essentially, when you think about marine mammals are air-breathing humans in a way. You're breathing air right now. Marine mammals breathe air too, so that means they need to come up and breathe. Whales, dolphins, and porpoises are grouped into a family, or a group rather, of animals called cetaceans. So if I say I'm doing research on some cetaceans, it's a general reference to these animals. So we have the whales, where we have the toothless whales and the toothed whales. The toothed whales are the sperm whales, and they're the high frequency, or the click noises. Or then there's the humpback whales, the baleen, the toothless whales, the low frequency sounds. Dolphins are basically like sperm whales, toothed whales. And then when I say dolphins generally have that pronounced beak or rostrum. So it's pointy. So think of Flipper. Flipper is your ultimate iconic, and The porpoise teeth are like spades. So they're spade-shaped teeth. And also porpoises don't have that rostrum or that long mouth. It's more just like it's there's no rostrum there. So
a bit more of a flat face.
Yeah, there you go. So you've got your dolphins with the more of the bottlenose like, and then the flat face and the spade like porpoises. There you go. So they all live in the ocean. What's key is that they all bring, how do I say this? They all bring a lovely sense of humanoid, or I should say that whenever I look at a whale or a dolphin, I keep going, you know what, these animals, we are so similar. We should start doing as much as we can to protect them like they are our relatives. And it kind of sounds a bit corny if you're a scientist listening to this. Just stop. Remember, I'm talking as a human being to your general audience, and it's a great way for people to connect. So we've got two nostrils. I'm pointing, for those who can't see me, which you can't, I'm pointing to my nose, okay? If I hold my nose like this, you can't hear me acoustically, you can hear me talk different. But if we have a nose, a dolphin or a whale nose is located to the top of their head, that's an inbuilt snorkel. So essentially these animals are amazingly equipped for the ocean, right? Amazing. It's so cool. And we always think about whales as being far removed from us, but yes, they breathe the same air and they've got hair. They have hair, listeners. They've got hair around their face. Dolphins, when dolphins are born, they have whiskers. And I've seen some whales that had whiskers as well. But with the dolphins, working closely with them, I could see the bits of where their whiskers were. They're marine mammals, and they give birth to live young. If you're a midwife, they have tail birth, a water birth, and a breech birth only. So there's so many cool things that I just love making and telling people and illuminating the excitement of why I love these creatures. Unfortunately, I come to you after having just done a whale necropsy, which is a whale autopsy, to learn more about that individual. And honestly, seeing its baleen, its plates, and then its belly button up close, and then its bum.
Whoa, did you say, so whales have a belly button?
Whales have a belly button, everyone. Yep, and I speak about this in my book, Humpback Highway, which is an amazing, easy read for, it's a hybrid. It's like for teens and adults to understand what the whales are doing why are they even existing? What do they do? Humpback Highway, everyone. Sneaky plug.
Cool. I'll definitely be grabbing a copy and having a bit of a read. Yeah, belly buttons. I mean, there's just so much to unpack in what you just said. The first thing I want to know is, so you said like you were talking about whales, dolphins, and porpoises.
Yep. Cetaceans. There you go, listeners. Yep.
So would I be correct or would I be really wrong if I was to say that like dolphins are more closely related to toothed whales than toothed whales are to baleen whales? Is that correct?
You know what?
How does that work?
Matt, that is very, very clever of you to have said that. And I would say, look, dolphins and toothed whales, like the dolphins and sperm whales, are more similar compared to a baleen whale, toothless. And the main, whatever word I was about to say and I forgot, the main difference is that the way they see the world and the way they communicate. When we think of teeth, those animals are the ones that use high frequency communication. Echolocation. That's using sounds to see the world. What they do, this is basically what the Navy does. We've modeled so much stuff off animals. It's like, remember the submarine sounds, the bong?
The pings, ping.
Bong. Okay, like you should overlay this. Bong. That's like echolocation. You've got an animal that makes a sound and then it puts a sound out there. And if there's something close by, it'll be like, or if it gets really close, then it's something there. So essentially these animals can see with sound, and that's how they hunt, communicate high frequency sounds.
It's a little bit like, what's that superhero? Is it Daredevil, I think?
Yeah. Okay, now this is showing that I'm really not into any of that stuff, but I welcome any analogies or similarities rather. Okay, so he uses echolocation.
And someone is probably going to correct me on this, I'm sure.
Okay, listeners in the comments below.
Send me an email, tell me about it, but I think it's Daredevil. And I think, yeah, he sees through sound. And I remember actually watching a follow-on, like a little, Nat Geo kind of thing, where some blind people can almost see by sound themselves, which I was like amazed.
So right, I've heard this too. People have learned to echolocate. Amazing. So dolphins, listen up. Dolphins and sperm whales use high-frequency sounds which travel short distances, okay? Echolocation, boom. Now, put them to the side. Our low-frequency communicators, like the humpback whale, blue whale, all those that don't have proper teeth, they've got the baleen plates, hair-like structures. They use low-frequency sounds which travel, surprise, surprise, long distances. So yeah, their method of sound production is done from inside their body. And when I say inside their body, like we don't actually understand how they really produce sound, but they've got this, humpback whales in particular have this awesome way of breathing in and then capturing, like having a sac, a U-fold, a special U-fold that allows them to have a sac of air to recycle there, and then they get rid of, because otherwise it'd be like us going la 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 la
So
la
they
la
can
la breath,
continually sing with this sack of air.
boom, but they do need to come up. They have got to come up. So it's just incredible. I mean, even if I think about this, with the dolphins and the sperm whales, the way they produce sound is with their phonic lips or their monkey lips, or in other words, their blowhole. So they alternate the amount of pressure coming out of the blowholes. That's why you can sometimes hear dolphins do that or that. Or if they're annoyed, it's a chuff. They can go like that noise. And so that's forcing pressure through the blowhole. And then the humpback whales and the other animals, which I don't really understand all of it, but it's just like the recycling of sound like that. So you hear that whoop, whoop, whoop noise.
That classic beautiful sound
Yeah,
you might hear a
the
recording
beautiful sound could be like this. So, I've heard a lot of random whale sounds. So yeah.
Ooh, and I mean, I know this just fact as a one-liner, but I'm sure there's a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. One way you can tell the difference between the two from the
Yeah.
surface is the number of nostrils and the blow.
You're actually very clever, Matt. Oh my gosh. I used to be a dolphin trainer. Here comes a fish to you. So generally, that's a really good way of, so if an animal has one single blowhole, and wait, scientists, don't freak out, I'm explaining myself. One blowhole visible, generally it's a high frequency communicator. Now, the sperm whale is one of those fabulously odd animals. Apparently they've got the two options, but there's just the left nasal passage that is visible. You know what, Matt? You're asking me a lot of stuff that I haven't really gone into my vault, into my mind for a while, and I'm going, actually, there's so much juiciness that people need to know.
Yeah, the world of whales is, I think everyone thinks, oh, beautiful whale. And I think it's often known that, people identify certain whales by their tail or their fluke. But I love things like nostril information.
Boom. Or what about the sound that they make? Or I've got some really cool observations that I've been going through, unpublished research, so I can't talk about it. But it's so exciting what people are seeing. And I guess that's also the big thing. It's one thing to be a scientist, right? But nowadays, the way people consume information and see things, you can't do it on your own or just a small group. You've got to get the power of the citizen, the non-scientist, to help us out. And that's what I love. Sharing the information through comms is really important. I get a lot of whale poo for talking about science and whales, but I'm so over it because the amount of people that light up when they hear that whales don't need to wear coats on Play School, which I was on for a very exciting episode for Science Time this year, and a previous one too, about helping keep the beach clean. I mean, that's science communication to both adults and kids. So I'm going to talk about it because I'm actually making sure that our next generations are informed. And then even to talking about this to this demographic, it's really important. And it's also, people are genuinely curious and have a thirst for knowledge. It's really important to acknowledge that. So I will just point out that you're doing yourself a very good favor by listening to this podcast, because also, Matt, a lot of people, surprise, surprise, don't really give a hoot about whales. So I also spend a lot of my time making sure that those decision makers give a hoot about whales.
Yeah.
And I can talk about how they're all important to us.
Yeah. I mean, let's like backtrack a little bit. So I have a bit of a whaley question for you. So previously I've had mentioned that seals have whiskers and they use them in the water, and they are kind of related to cats in a way.
Okay.
Dolphins have whiskers. Do they use them? How do they use them? What are they for? And are they related to a land animal that we kind of know today? Or what's the closest land relative of a cetacean?
Oh, I think, okay, big question here.
Or is it topical?
No, it's good. It's good. Hippos are probably the closest relative. They're kind of like a marine mammal. The whisker situation, there is not one person on earth that understands what their whiskers are for.
Wow.
And I'm trying to understand what the hell their whiskers are for as well. But because they drop off, and so humpback whales do have their little, on the tubercles, a little hair. It most likely is serving as a sensory, or, they don't need hair, do they, in the ocean because they're covered so well. Maybe it's a way that they can help find mother's milk. I don't actually know, but the whiskers do not form, on a whale or a dolphin, which they fall off, they do not serve the same function, at least that I believe, that the whiskers of, say, a sea lion would. And right now, for your listeners, I'm using my hands as whiskers because I used to work with sea lions as well. And when they move up to things, the first thing they do is, well, obviously that noise.
I
These
love that
animals
noise.
are really acoustically noisy. So what I'm doing now is I used to work with sea lions, Australian sea lions. They're very rare, unfortunately, and they would bring their whiskers forward. It's one of the main ways that they will see the world, communicate, and noises, which is not very attractive to have seen me do this right now. But that's what they do, and that's why they see the world, and they hunt fish. But dolphins and whales are not using whiskers per se to be doing that. We just don't know what it serves.
Yeah, interesting. So if I had to ask you, what would be a theory on what you think the whiskers are for? If you had to guess, what would be a reasonable theory?
I think that probably is maybe two things. Might be a remnant because they are marine, they're mammals. So we all have hair. That's one of our key defining features. Or perhaps it is used when they're little and we don't understand that stage. So maybe it is a way of a sensory mechanism. I'm just not too sure, but that's one of the theories. And again, I'm very cautious in the science world that if I say something that everyone's going to hold me to a wall saying, how did you say this? That's why we talk about what things could be, because there's so much we don't know, and that's okay. And that's what's really great. If you're a photographer listening, you probably have swum with billions of whales before. Great. But at the end of the day, you still don't really understand what those whales are doing, nor do I. And I've done a whole PhD on these animals. No one really understands them. That's why I really love the fact that we can continue to learn together. Because at the end of the day, you see amazing things. We can try and interpret what it means, and we can help share that with the world. So we love that cross-learning opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's so important also to remember, facts as we see them, they change. And so I know, you look through a lot of field guide books from the 70s and 80s, especially with the marine species. And since we've done genetics on animals, we've actually been reclassifying them and being like, well, that's the same species or they're different species. And so, it's ever evolving, which is...
Matt, that is such a thing you just said, because what used to be just a dolphin, a bottlenose dolphin, has turned into now a third subspecies, the Terciops australis. That's so cool. And what was one of the dolphins at SeaWorld many years ago, Amity, she was an Indo-Pacific humpback dolphin. Now she's just a humpback dolphin, well, she's passed. But like little things like that. Yeah, Matt, and you speak to so many amazing people. This is so great that you have that understanding as well. Because with science, we are advancing in how we can ask questions. And I've just got some data back recently from a new method, which I can't go into yet because we haven't published on it. But I am just so excited. I'm optimistic and I'm so excited. And I just think by telling the world about it after being peer reviewed and the process goes on, but the opportunity to share knowledge is so beautiful.
Yeah, really is. When you can share it, you'll have to jump back on for a little update, a 10-minute update episode. I'd love to hear this.
Yeah, thank you. No, I honestly would just love to. So this is another message for everyone. If you are doing marine science, unfortunately, I'm an impatient person, but I've learned that you have to be very patient, because sometimes when you find out things, you try to understand it. But when you learn from others who have a lot of expertise, that is one of the most priceless things on earth. So it's an opportunity to learn from others. I am also working with Indigenous knowledge holders. And the way I see whales, both now as a mum as well, and with working with Indigenous knowledge holders, I have such a different perspective. I can't believe it. For the better, in my opinion. The respect has always been there, but the respect has just been, it's just zoomed up. And that just means that I'm even more motivated to do as much as I can while I'm on Earth for these creatures.
Yeah, no, they're pretty amazing animals, the old whale. And I want to, there's just so much cool stuff you're saying. And
I love it.
remembering them
Thank you,
and being like, ahoy. Just a quick pause to let you know a great way to support the show is to jump onto my website, mtunderwatermedia.com, and have a look at the new board game, A Big Fish, which I've been creating with a few others. It's awesome, it's available now, and it's all about making sure there's lots of fish in the future. Now, back to the show. But I want to jump back. One thing I don't understand, I wonder if my listeners don't understand either, is I'm going to fixate, but are there dwarf or minke blue whales?
So when we think of blue whales, apparently there are 4 different types. We've got the Antarctic, which is the biggest blue whale, up to 30 meters. Then we've got the pygmy blue whale, which we likely see on the west coast of Australia. And I've also written a paper with Professor Harcourt of observations off the east coast. So we see them here sometimes. And then you've got the two others that hang out in the northern hemisphere. So these animals are amazing. But if you're listening to this and you're going, what? There's more than one blue whale type? Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, and does that go for other types of whales as well? Like, how many species of whale or cetacean are there?
I thought this question would come up. Well, I know at least in Australian waters, there's 45 different or so, and that's talking about whales, dolphins, and porpoises. But if you go through the whole taxa, every single whale, every single dolphin, every single porpoise, the answer is, I think it's over 70 plus. And I say plus because, well, to your point before, how do we know what's actually a different subspecies? So we could be having this conversation now and then later on it's like, oh yeah, that's actually separated from that because we've got genetics on that. It's an ever-evolving space, but a good one.
Yeah.
And also off the top of my head, the entire amount of different species. Yeah, I don't actually off the top of my head know. I just know it's over that amount.
Yeah, because I know from my limited knowledge of dolphins on the south coast of Australia, there's always a debate about different species and different subspecies. And I mean, I guess we should probably clear up because a few people listening might be like, well, does it matter? Who cares about the species?
Absolutely.
It matters for conservation, doesn't it?
Look, if you're listening to this and you're going, these two are fluffing around, well, let us fluff around because there's always going to be a naysayer out there. So this is my naysayer jujitsu. Why do we even care? Well, actually, yeah, Matt, if we're going for conservation reasons and we have scientific evidence that something is a little different to something else and there's a massive environmental threat or conservation need for this particular species, then yes, I will personally be using the fact that we have evidence to suggest that they're different from others. Unfortunately, in the whale and dolphin and porpoise world, cetacean world, there's no one blanket conservation measure that you can take. And I must point out at this stage, there's also, as we speak, at least 10 vaquita porpoise in the Gulf of California still swimming around. They will likely go extinct in your and our lifetime because unfortunately they become entangled in fishing gear, which is not a good thing, but also they don't have a huge range. And there's a whole number of different things. So I'm not pointing fingers at fisheries, all these other things, but what I am trying to say is as a scientist, we have conservation in mind, but we need to do it in the right way, whether it be using the power of genetics to identify certain species, but also working with different stakeholders so that we can work together for a solution. Because it's all too often, I see on social media, people have these opinions and thoughts. That's great. Let them have it. But as a scientist who wants to work with others, my opinion is very much driven on how can we work together for the animal? And that's the absolute underlying point of what I do as a scientist. It's essentially merging technology for conservation and then using my platform, the social media platform I've been building for years now, to have this information provided to the decision makers because, hey, whether it be from Play School or standing next to the Australian Prime Minister presenting science awards, there's the opportunity there. And why not bring whales onto the national stage?
It also sounds like Australia might be a bit of a whale hotspot if we've got like 45 different species of cetacean around.
Well, look at our coastline. Our coastline is massive and our efforts to protect marine mammals is pretty good. We do a pretty good job, but there is a lot that we don't know. So when it comes to sharks, for example, we fear what we don't know. When it comes to whales, we're obviously not fearing them, but they can potentially do more damage than a shark, in my opinion. There is so much we don't know about them. How can we have a whole protection of them if there's just some animals we don't even know where they go? Do they even migrate? I mean, my whole research with the Brutus whales is trying to, and we've published on this, showing that they are here possibly year round. I mean, That's amazing. Usually when people, the humpback whales have gone down to Antarctica to feed for the summer, done, I'm going to shut my whale eyes. But no, I'm telling your listeners, we should keep that effort going throughout the whole year.
Yeah. Let's chat about migration too. So humpback whales migrate, blue whales migrate.
I believe so. At least the pygmy blue whale, because the pygmy blue whale goes into the Banda Sea in Indonesia and then comes down to feed during the summer. The Antarctic blue whale, I'm not 100% sure because they usually hang out south. But the pygmy blue whale, we've got lovely evidence and tracks and satellite tracks from them to show that they are moving from one area to another.
And what about the rest of the species? I'm presuming a lot of dolphins aren't migratory, but like, are there some whales that are permanent, like hangers? How does migration work across the cetacean world?
Well, I mean, you've got some that are capital breeders, which means they invest one part of the year feeding, gaining all that capital, their food, right? And then they go, whoop, okay, done that. We're going to use those resources to go and breed and then do that.
And are they, sorry to interrupt, are they baleen whales mainly who are the capital ones?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I wouldn't. Oh, there's always an exception to that because the Brutus whale, remember our Brutus whales? They are, in fact, baleen whales, but they are suspected to be non-migratory. So are they not capital breeders then? They might be feeding more often because they feed throughout the year. These are questions that, as I'm telling you this, we still don't know. How fabulous is that? But yes,
Yeah.
essentially the humpback whale, your dwarf minke whale, they invest one part of the year to feed, then they use those resources to breed, then come back to feed, then it repeats. Repeat on repeat, and then we can have that whole. That's why when we think about Antarctica, krill, if you're not listening to anything from this podcast, krill is incredibly important because it's the foundational, it's a keystone species in Antarctica that really helps the functioning of the entire ecosystem. So when I see climate change happening, which we know is happening, we've got reduction in sea ice. That means poor krill are losing their homes. We've got fishing in some areas. And there's so many different impacts. Look, I think it's very important for you to be aware as listening to this because these animals do face a number of serious problems. So by having awareness to it and how our actions by driving a car are indirectly impacting animals like that, that's really important.
So with the krill, and we'll dive into the nitty gritty a little bit. With the krill, if someone does want to help krill out, aside doing what they can for the world of climate change, what else can they do to make sure they avoid krill products or in things in that kind of world?
Great work, Matt. So I will point out, massive shout out to CAMELA, the convention on, and we will get the acronym because I always forget the convention, but essentially
it's such a bad acronym.
It's a CAMELA, okay? So we'll put the acronym in there for you. That's essentially an annual meeting to look at the biodiversity in the Southern Ocean with a focus on krill. My biggest fear personally as a human being, also as a scientist, is the krill fishing. So when we see, and again, David Attenborough's done it again, the Oceans documentary, I remember watching that with my two kids on my calves. We were watching that and my kids, 2 and 4, got up and were like, well, what's going on here? I didn't say anything. And that was the trawlers fishing for krill. So in response to your question, Matt, the first thing I personally would, and I'm not doing, I would not support any krill product. And because I'm concerned about we're harvesting things that we don't know. We don't know.
And what is a krill product? Like
a krill product would be like krill oil tablets. That's a really good question. I think there might be liquid, but generally I've seen the krill oil tablets and I'm like, oh gosh, whenever I see that, that's whale food. And I'm sure I'm not here to work against people. I'm just here simply to say, as a human as well, I don't understand how much we've got down there. I know we've got a recovering whale populations. What impact is this going to have? And unfortunately, I know that whales get entangled and have died in nets. That's a reality and that's public knowledge. So so I'm not meaning to scare people. I'm not that kind of doctor. Do what you need to do. But I personally won't be purchasing any krill products because obviously I'm a whale scientist. But I'm very nervous about what's going on in Antarctica that we don't yet understand.
Yeah, and I think that's I think krill oil tablets, I think it's used for arthritis, something like that. The science isn't really clear on them. And so if you do love whales, I would, say avoid the krill. But let's jump back into the awesome world of whales. I like to, discuss some serious stuff, but then do some fun stuff.
It's important, Matt. Well done.
So I know you've been working with humpback whales a little bit and their biology specifically. I want to know, how big is a humpback whale heart? Talk to me about a heart of a humpback whale.
Oh, I could have told you about how big a humpback whale tail was today because I was literally standing in front of it and I just wanted to stand there to tell my kids how big it was. It was like
how big?
2 meters across.
So the size of your car.
Yeah, that's a really good one. But the heart of a humpback whale is, I don't think it's as, I've only seen a young humpback whale's heart, so it wasn't fully grown, but it's pretty decent. It's probably could fit nicely on your family living table. Now, when we think about the blue whale heart, we think of the Volkswagen Beetle car.
Yeah.
I don't believe they're that big. From the people I've spoken to who've done this, they might be super duper big, or at least the animals that I've heard of what people have done a necropsy on has not been amazingly huge. So in other words, their arteries are really big. So for example, I was looking at a whale artery today, and you could put, I'm cupping my hand right now to the width of a 50-cent coin if you're in Australia.
Yeah.
If you're in America or somewhere else, maybe if you think you're holding
Like a golf ball.
a
Golf
golf
ball
a
size.
golf ball. Yeah, there you go, Matt. Well done. Golfers save the day. So I love having all these little things, and eyeballs. Eyeballs are like the size of a baseball or a rock melon. Cantaloupe. I've covered all different regions of what they call it. They're just massive proportions. So cool. And again, why whales don't need to wear a jacket because of that blubber. Watch Stream It Now Science Time, everyone, for Play School in Australia.
I'll put a link in at the end.
Yeah, nice. But I was looking at the blubber, and the blubber is amazing. So you see them, photographers, you see them wobble in the water. There's so much weight to that skin, to that blubber. They've got so much to them. They are such incredible creatures. Seeing them and understanding their anatomy is so incredible. Every time I see one up close, I just want to learn more.
And I mean, the blubber, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the blubber is one of the reasons why when they do beach themselves, not only do they get hot, but they have this weight that crushes them, which is one of the big things, isn't it?
Matt, you're so clever. Yeah, it is. Honestly, they're so good at heating themselves that they can overheat, but they've never felt their body weight on land. They've only ever had a water birth and forever been in the water. So when they strand, which we don't know why, they can essentially crush their organs with their own body weight. That's pretty crap. It's awful, and strandings are horrific, and we don't understand why. But last 2 years, we've been working on some of the initial observations of pre-whale stranding behavior. I remember seeing on X, which is now formerly Twitter, observations from Shane's Beach a few years ago in Western Australia of the huddling behavior of pilot whales. And when I saw this, it was a first-time thing to see. And I was like, I have never seen this before. Could this be these animals are disorientated and something's gone wrong, or a sick individual? Or is this, and I said it in my third point, is this pre-whale stranding behavior? And you know what? They stranded after that.
Yeah.
So new insights is helping us learn more, but the majority of those animals, they did pass because, yeah, like I said, once the animal strands and their body weight is on their body, the clock of survival starts ticking. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, and I remember looking at those pilot whales and wondering if it perhaps, and this was my wild theory, which no one quote me on, but I was wondering if it was perhaps like a fear response, kind of like a group of wildebeest running away from some predators. And I was wondering if some orcas maybe kind of scare them into these bays or into this fear. That's been my kind of wild theory. But as you said,
that is not a wild theory. That could potentially have been one of the reasons. We don't know. But of Tasmania, it's pretty amazing to know that the same species of whale stranded in exactly the same spot 2 years exactly to the day.
That's very weird.
What the hell was going on there? Super duper interesting. So I know a lot of you are probably like, oh, it's because of this and it's because of this. If you're listening, we don't yet fully understand. And I know some people are thinking it might be man-made activities because there has been links with overseas examples. We just don't know in the cases here in Australia. So please be mindful that you're probably thinking, I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I am very aware that there's a lot of people who have opinions and let them. But we just don't know in the case of Australian examples.
And one thing I will say about the date and it being the exact same day,
yeah,
I think a lot of people see that initially and they go, "Wow, that's man-made. It's our calendar." But up on the Great Barrier Reef on Lady Elliot Island, I know that manta rays arrive at the island on the exact same day each year. So animals have got their days going too. So it's one thing important to think about. I think that pilot world when you're pinning something on something, and it could be a man-made thing, but the date thing is not as much evidence as you might.
Matt, that is such a cool example. I love Lady Elliot.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. But to hear that about the manta rays are just so stunning. They're also in my second children's book, Oceans at Night. And they feature in that because I wanted children to see the amazing things that these creatures did at nighttime. And manta rays at nighttime, during the day, it was also cool to see. But I've swum with them, done that dive in Hawaii where you have the lights and then they're feeding.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did that when I was a master's student and I was like, these animals are real cool.
They're cool, and like on episode 60 we talk about mantas, and I did it with a manta guide I'd been with in the Maldives, and yeah, the nighttime stuff, you're just like,
epic.
Wow, you can be like 3 centimeters from their face and they know exactly who you are. They're chill.
I know. I know. And also, I heard some people say that apparently people are touching them in Hawaii. Don't touch them because they see the handprints on them.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a friendly reminder, don't touch a marine mammal or marine animal really because they have zoonosis, which means they could give us stuff. And just don't touch them. It's just not nice.
Yeah, I think it's like, yeah, it's a good thing. I think, looking at them, observing them, getting, some species you can get up close to depending.
Yep.
But I think touching is where we draw the line, apart from things like touch tanks with starfish. And
Well,
I think
you've all seen Finding Dory?
Yeah.
With the touch tank and the animals.
Yeah, well, also, yeah, you can think of it that way. But yeah, I always think, an urchin and a starfish and an aquarium, I'm like, yeah, touch away. That's where I draw the line anyway. Ahoy! Just another real quick pause to remind you that a great way to help the show is to jump into our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Seacreatures Podcast, where you'll get free images, bonus episodes, and early episode releases, plus a discount on my website, mtunderwatermedia.com, where you can grab big fish. Back to the show.
Well, that's right. And Matt, people can choose what they want to do, but in Australia we have blue ring octopus, and people have died from these creatures. And people think that whales are very gentle giants, but they remind me of my cow I grew up with when I was a young kid. They're really rough at times, and they don't know they know their size. But one flicker of a whale could potentially kill you, and people forget that. So yeah, it's just I think it's a respect, but also sometimes when you see a whale or a shark, whatever it is, you're in awe and you're like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah, I still think the size though. I've been underwater and come across a southern right whale, and it just swims straight at you, and there's a moment where you're like, uh-oh, I should get out of the way. And some of my friends are like, nah, you just stay there, and it goes past. And I'm sure they're right, but when you see a 10-meter long, multiple ton animal coming at you, you need to give it a bit of respect.
That's right, Matt. And this is a thing. I'm also working in the Kingdom of Tonga on an island called Vavau, and we've started the Tongan Whale Tourism Project. And the idea is to ensure the longevity and sustainability of swimming. So not to stop it, but to find ways where we can learn from the operators, the local community. It's in collaboration with the Kingdom of Tongan government. And the Vavau Environmental Protection Association. So that's the Tongan Whale Tourism Project. Maybe some of your listeners were surveyed this year or a few years in time. And it's just an awesome opportunity to learn about the whales as they recover, but also how people see them and what people's perceptions are. I'd never thought in a million years I'd be doing a social science component to my hard science. And even when I say hard science, I'm really sorry, social scientists, I'm wrong, because social science is so incredibly important. We, as humans, use that information to understand how we respond to things. So in this case, how we can help whales to ensure they're nice and safe and that they can be enjoyed for years to come. Yeah,
because Tonga, I was in Tonga many years ago, and there was only like 5 boats in Vavau, like doing their like their kind of thing. And yeah, I haven't been back, but I just keep hearing more and more boats and more competition, and it's one of those few places in the world where you can safely, without disturbing them too much if it's done right, enjoy a humpback whale. So I'd love to hear a bit more, and let's do a 2-minute scoop of what it is.
Okay, so essentially we're trying to understand, working with community, what do people think about whale swimming? What's the current snapshot of it? How much economically does it bring in? These questions have been asked in the past. We don't have a revised idea. And so by working with operators, local communities, and also tourists, we're building a bigger and better picture of this, and also what people need. So what do the operators need from a scientist perspective, and vice versa? What can we learn from each other? That's the Tongan Whale Tourism Project. It's multi-staged. Watch this space, because you never know, you might be contributing information to the project. And it's generally one of the things I want to do as a scientist is not go somewhere and just leave. I want to make sure. I've been working with the Kingdom of Tonga since 2013, and Professor Rob Harcourt and Megan Kessler in my lab group, Marine Predator Research Group at Macquarie University here in Sydney, been working with the whale swim tourism, and essentially wrote the first papers on swimming with whales, where a lot of the research was done in Hapai, talking about entering the water with loud entries versus quiet entries and things like that. So there's a lot to learn.
So, and because as we kind of get to the end of the podcast, one of my favorite things is to help people understand how they can interact or enjoy these animals in a great way. So if people do want to do a whale swim, or they want to get close to whales, what's the, apart from a whale watching boat, what's the best way, or what should people look out for if they're booking a whale swim tour?
Okay, that's a really good question. So you can do whale tourism is globally, right? But the opportunity to interact with whales with swimming only happens in a few places. Tonga, it's now in Australia, growing quite rapidly. French Polynesia, just to name a few. What I would be looking out for is to ensure that the operation that you go out with is aware of a respectful approach. So if there are guidelines in place, making sure you listen to the guidelines. And if there's a guide required, like in the Kingdom of Tonga, stay with the guide. That's what they're there for. They're there also earning a living, but we need to make sure that you are appropriately and responsibly enjoying these animals so that they're there for future years to come. We don't want to see people who are jumping on the back of whales. Oh my goodness, don't do that. Even if it's a dead whale, please don't do that. I work with the Indigenous knowledge holders here in Australia, and that would be incredibly disrespectful to that whale. So just, I guess, do your homework first. Speak with few people and get their opinion. But the ultimate thing that I want people just to be aware of: please be respectful to these creatures. Enjoy them. Oh my gosh, seeing a whale is the most incredible thing. I'm not here to stop anyone from seeing a whale. I think you should. And I also acknowledge that photographers also have the ability to tell stories in a beautiful way, and that is celebrated. But do that in a positive way, and let science also come into your world as well.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember, like on some of those points, is that tourism can be a force for conservation by giving, it sounds really brutal of me, but by giving the whale an economic value in the form of tourism, it's actually a huge conservation thing. So I think that everyone just needs to tread the line, do a bit of research, don't shy away from it because it can be a force for good, but don't go over the top.
Matt, you are bang on. People make a lot of money from people wanting to see whales. They are economically valuable around the world, and that's just the reality of it. I could do all my work for free, and pretty much I am doing it for free. But the fact that people love whales, people will pay to see them. And that's not going to change. People are going to pay for petrol. People are going to pay for flights to see these animals. They will do it. You're a photographer too, Matt. You understand. So it's all about that balancing act. And it's a really great point to really end this up on, because people want to consume seeing animals and experiences, and they're not going to stop it. So we need to make sure that it's going to happen. Let's roll with it, and let's see how we can do it for the better of whales and also humans.
Yeah, and I think one of the base examples is you look at Indonesia and you look at the Raja Ampat, where the value of seeing manta rays has created a marine reserve, and I think that's where we can go with whales in a way. Like,
yes, I love.
And that's how we stop. That's how we stop whaling. I think in the long term is by not only getting people pay to see them, but they get a connection to them.
I love that. And Matt, what you're doing through your work and chatting now here is we are all connected to these creatures in a way that's personal or whatever it may be. But it is wonderful seeing a whale. And I think if anyone looks at a whale and goes, oh, that's terrible, they're a sad person. So we're embracing them.
Okay, so just before we wrap up, are there any cool facts about whales that we've missed, or something that you're just like, this is the coolest fact and we didn't mention it?
Well, I've told you that whales have belly buttons. I mean, if you've got a kid at home, you have got to tell them that. I also love that the whale pectoral flippers, the humpback whale.
Which ones are the pectoral flippers?
The humpback whale, the arms of a whale.
Yeah, okay.
So they use them, whales and dolphins use them to steer. But the humpback whales is the longest, and sometimes you can see like a bobbly, a funny kind of shape to them. Engineers model wind turbine blades based off those.
Wow, that's
so
a cool fact.
I just think that's amazing. Also, when their throat is expanded, it's like a slinky or an accordion, and they're really clever because the whole design, it's so nicely packaged that it just comes back in after they've got all that water and then they've taken the water out on the side of their baleen. That's just so cool.
Okay, let's finish on that. All right. So the whale is searching for its food. It comes across a pack of krill. Talk us through the biology of what happens.
If you're a baleen whale, so toothless whale, you've got baleen plates there, and then your throat is kind of like this slinky or an accordion. And to accommodate their krill or whatever they're going to eat, they'll engulf both the krill or the fish or anchovies, whatever it is, and the water at the same time. So their throat pleats will expand huge. And then they'll have both their food and the water in their mouth, but they don't want to have the water in there. So then they use their baleen plates to trap the little creatures in their baleen, and also and allow the water to sieve out, and voila. And then the throat goes back to a lovely streamlined body. Even Matt, the male area, the male parts, when they're active, they will exit the body. They still stay attached. But then when it's not in use, it retracts back in, and they're all hydrodynamic. Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. And sorry, I just have to clarify this. So when they're feeding, they're taking a gulp and then they're pulling the krill out of that gulp versus something like a basking shark, which is swimming and filtering. Is that correct?
Well, you've opened up another can of worms right at the end, because some southern right whales are feeding like skim feeding. So some whales will skim feed like the southern right whale of North Atlantic, where they're literally opening their mouths and just going scooping. Some will trap feed like the Brutus whales in some areas, where they'll just open their mouth and then slam it shut. And then others will shallow water surf feeding, which we described as a new whale feeding behavior with Brutus whales. So there's a variety of different things, but generally, if you're a baleen whale, you want to maximize that effort to open up the mouth, engulf the food, allow the water to go out the side of the baleen plates, have the baleen trap the food, and then use your tongue, rise up, swallow, and then happy days.
Cool. I love that, because it's things like that you go, okay, they're feeding, but you never understand.
It's, Matt, that's why as a kid, going back to the start of this chat, I always saw parts of whales in books and I had no idea what they were. I'm literally speaking to you after seeing a whale up close today, obviously in an unfortunate situation, but wow, I'm taken back at how wow it is. They are the coolest animals on earth.
Yeah, and so if anyone wants to learn, as we finish up, if anyone wants to learn more about whales and yourself and the work you do with whales, what should they do? Where should they go and what should they read?
Well, the best place to go is my website, vanessapirotta.com. We'll put that in the link. So that's pirotta.com. That'll link you to my children's resources, teenagers' resources, young kids' play school if you live in Australia. Then we've also got documentaries, Southern Ocean Live, that we've got there. I've also delivered a National Press Club address recently. If you're an Australian as well, that's on there.
Cool.
And my books are also there. So Humpback Highway is your one-stop shop for adults and teens to talk about whales, from Migaloo to the use of acoustics to find whales. Then you've also got my 2 children's books, The Voyage of Whale and Calf and Oceans at Night.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, well, I'll put links to not only your website, but a few of those things. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Matt. I am honoured. And for those listening, thank you and well done for learning all these amazing things.
Seacreatures Podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by myself, Matt Testoni. And first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to all our Patreon members: Jack, Sid, David, TJ, Michael, Rose, Jared, Derek, Sally, Jeremy, Callie, and Warren. Thank you so much for supporting Seacreatures. It's how I continue to make the show. If you like the podcast, consider jumping onto our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Seacreatures Podcast, where we're starting to put up episodes early, some bonus episodes, and a whole bunch of free images of pics I've taken of different sea creatures around the world. Production assistance by George McGrath, and music by the talented, incredible, and awesome Dan Musil. This was our first episode in our whale special, where we're stringing together a whole bunch of whale-themed episodes to end 2025. Coming up and next time on the Seacreatures Podcast, we're going to be talking all about dolphins with a real-life dolphin trainer. This has been the Seacreatures Podcast. Over and out.